Hey guys, it's Jane. Well, February's come and gone. I know I'm a bit late, but it's time for me to do my February wrap up. I read 10 novels and 2 graphic novels this month. It was a much more varied month in February for me than it was in January. And I read a lot of mysteries this month, partly just because I was feeling a bit of a urge to do that because I realised I hadn't read many in a while. Since I've been on BookTube, I've been getting so many fantastic fantasy recommendations. I've been reading a whole heap of fantasy. And I am a broad reader by nature, and I just felt like I had enough of fantasy and I wanted to read something a bit different. The other reason was that I was doing some research and thinking for my Mystery Monday series that I've started, and so I just wanted to get back into that place in my brain. So a lot of these I'm going to be talking about today are mysteries. I'm hoping that from March onwards I can get back to a more balanced reading diet. And yeah, we'll see. But this is what I read in February. I read the first 2 Veronica Mars books by Rob Thomas, writing with Jennifer Graham. They were The $1,000 Tan Line and Mr. Kiss and Tell. I've actually already filmed a review of these, which I'm planning on posting as my Mystery Monday video this coming Monday. So if you're interested, tune in on Monday. I also read 2 by S.J. Rozan, Ghost Hero, and the second one was Out for Blood or On the Line, depending on where you are. That has 2 different titles. Ghost Hero was actually a really good read. So I just want to spend just a second telling you about that one. It's a PI mystery, but it's not hard-boiled. The central character in this one is Lydia Chin, who is a young female private detective. The case that she's working on in Ghost Hero is about an artist, a Chinese artist. One of the names that he's given is Ghost Hero, which is where the title of the book comes from, who supposedly died in the Tiananmen Square massacre in China in the 80s. He was involved in political activism, and his work was quite political. In the world of the story, I don't know about in the real world, but in the world of the story, Chinese contemporary art has become quite the it thing that there's a lot of money in. And rumours have arisen that this artist, who was supposed to have died in the 80s, is actually A, still alive, and B, still producing work. A potential buyer has approached Lydia and wants her to find out if it's true, because the buyer wants to, well, according to what he tells Lydia initially, he's trying to make a splash in the art world, and he thinks if he can get a hold of this art, then that will really get his foot in the door into the art scene. But there's more to it than meets the eye. There's a lot of stuff about politics. There's a lot of stuff about China and the art world in this mystery, and it's really nicely done. It's not a cozy mystery, nor is it hard-boiled. It's kind of in the traditional sort of space. There's a little bit of gunplay, but there's no major blood or anything. There's moments of tension, but it's not super graphic. And yeah, the mystery is really interesting. So that was a good one. Ghost Hero. The second one of those that I read, Out for Blood or On the Line, I found less exciting. I'll try and read a few more of the S.J. Rozans and see if I can get a more general idea of her oeuvre. But yeah, but Ghost Hero is a definite recommendation. I also read 2 by Attica Locke. Now, I've spoken about Attica Locke. She featured in my 10 favourite crime authors. She's my most recent favourite author. The 2 books by her are Blackwater Rising and The Cutting Season, and I talked about both of these in some length in my last Mystery Monday video, so I'm not going to go any further with those now. I also read this month 2 graphic novels. Disappointingly, they were both not that great. I picked up both of them just at my local library, so no skin off my nose. There was an Agatha Christie adaptation into graphic novel form, and there was a few of these at the library, and I picked up, and then there were none. I was a bit excited by it, but actually the execution of that wasn't so great. A, because the artwork was pretty uninspired. It was fine, it just wasn't anything special. And B, because I actually think on reflection that the whole idea of a mystery being adapted to a graphic novel there's a bit of a problem. Because so much of the enjoyment of reading a mystery is the elapsed time when you don't know what's going on, when you have ideas about what's going on but you don't really know, and the red herrings and the is it him or is it her or what's going on. And because graphic novels are so much quicker to read, it's just one sitting you've got from the beginning to the end, and there's not time to really have that tension. And so even if the art had been amazing, I now think it's a project that's pretty much doomed to failure. But that's just my opinion. The other one I picked up, I didn't know anything about, just the art looked really good. It was called The City of Ember by Jeanne DuPrau. The story, I didn't feel like there was enough in it to really satisfy a full story arc, and then it finished at this place that wasn't really finished. And I didn't know, but this is actually also a graphic novel adaptation of a book, and this is a first in a series of YA dystopian something. The art's good, but unless you're already a fan of these books, I wouldn't bother with the graphic novel. Then I read 2 books which were fun fantasies. The first one was Moon Over Soho, which is the second of the Ben Aaronovitch, Peter Grant urban fantasy police procedural crossovers. The first one of these is either called Rivers of London or Midnight Riot, depending on where you live. So Peter Grant is contemporary police constable in London who in the first book hears a ghost and then becomes part of this special secret part of Scotland Yard that deals with the supernatural or whatever, and is apprenticed to a wizard who is a detective inspector or something. So Moon Over Soho is a continuation of his career. The mystery in this one is about jazz musicians dropping like flies. The music stuff was really fun and really nicely done, and I actually really enjoyed this book significantly more than the first one. The other one was Going Postal, which is a Discworld novel, a Terry Pratchett Discworld novel, and this one is about the Royal Mail being brought back to life by the patrician because he wants a competitor to the Clacks, which is the Discworld telegraph service. So he finds a guy who was a conman who has been sentenced to hang, and basically saves his life and reinvents him as the postmaster, and it's a really fun story. There were 2 other books I'm just going to mention briefly that were not successes for me. One was Walter Mosley's When the Thrill Is Gone. This is a Leonard McGill mystery. It was the 3rd in the series, and I have not read the 1st and 2nd, and I think that was fundamentally a mistake. I really didn't get into this at all. There was elements of the story that I couldn't suspend my disbelief for, so I didn't really enjoy it. But I think that it may be an unfair judgment because I think in this case I really should have read the first ones first. Sometimes it's difficult to know with a series whether you can drop in or whether you need to start from the beginning, but anyway, I'm going to give this one the benefit of the doubt and say that I should have started at the beginning, but I did not really enjoy The Thrill Is Gone. And then there's one other book which I DNF'd this month, which I do not do very often, but there was a discussion in the Tuesday Talks group this past week, which I didn't get my shit together to do, about DNFing without guilt, and I say, yay, DNF without guilt. Seriously, people, life is too short. It was called Prayer by Phillip Kerr. And I hadn't got very far in, but I wasn't super enjoying it. And then I went and looked on Goodreads. I just wanted to get some sort of general idea about where it was going. And then I half read a comment which suggested something in my brain, a possibility about the central character. And I was like, no, I don't want to read that. I don't want that in my brain. And then I was like, I don't even know if that's true, but like I just couldn't read it anymore. And I was like, okay, that's all right. I don't have to read it because I don't have to read it if I don't want to. I'm only doing this because I choose to. So I just took that one back to the library and said, bye-bye, Prayer by Phillip Kerr, because I don't want to know. I didn't even want to take the chance of knowing if that turned out to be true. There's one more book that I'm going to talk about, the 12th item that I finished this month, and it was my favourite read of the month. And I'm so excited to be able to talk about it now because tomorrow is March 8th, which is International Women's Day. This is a book that's had all of the buzz on BookTube, but I am late to the party. It is Ancillary Justice by Leckie. So it's a science fiction story. It's space opera-y set in the far future. And it was just fantastic. It's basically about an AI. And this particular AI was designed to control a spaceship called Justice. I can't remember what kind of justice it was in the book, which is where the justice from the title comes from. This artificial intelligence is put into an impossible position. And there's this thing that happens, which I'm not going to tell you about, but there's this thing that happens that puts this artificial intelligence into a sort of moral quandary. And it's asked to do something which it really, really doesn't want to do, but it's asked in such a way that it can't refuse. And it does the thing that it's ordered to do, and then it kind of goes haywire. And in going haywire, it takes control of itself. And from there on in, it's decided that it is going to do what it wants to do. And it's a really interesting storyline. It's beautifully written. But the reason why I'm so happy to talk about it just on the eve of International Women's Day is one of the linguistic choices that Leckie made. The language that is the main language that the central characters speak doesn't have any gender. And so when this is translated into English, she has made the choice of using the default gender, linguistic gender, as female. So all of the characters are referred to as she. She did this, she went there, she was bad, she was evil, she was heroic. Now this refers to male characters, female characters, and sex unassigned characters like the artificial intelligence. The vibe of the book that gives, it's so enjoyable reading a book with all of these female, like linguistically female characters. And occasionally you find out that one of the characters is male because occasionally it's important in some way and so it's described. But just the default is that everybody is she. And even the characters that you know are male, because the language that they're talking doesn't have male or female and the author has decided to translate into the feminine in English, it's not really important to the story. But as a female reader of science fiction, having a shoot 'em out space opera story where all of the characters are female is just so... It makes you feel noticed and remembered and included. Now, it's not just that. Like, even for a dude, I reckon this is a kick-ass science fiction space opera. But as a chick, this was a rocking read, and I cannot recommend Ancillary Justice more highly. Anyway, that's it. That's what I read in February, including my feminist rant for International Women's Day. I hope you're all well, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!